Oh, that's real good.
Welcome back to another episode of the 1111 podcast. We're back for season 2, y'all. Can y'all believe it?
Make some noise.
Yeah. So excited to be able to sit down with an amazing person and a dear friend of the company, Joy Fennell. We're going to get into a little bit more about Joy, but I'm Matthew.
I'm Simone.
And I'm Donnie.
And we're here today with Joy Fennell.
Yes. Well, my family would probably be like, Fennell.
Fennell, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Get it right off the bat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Only I personally, it's my sister. She would probably be like, Fennell.
Yes. I know that. As long as I know you, I've been saying it wrong the whole time.
No, it's all good. But thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you all. I've known you guys for a very long time, and what an honor to sit down and talk with you all.
Oh, we appreciate that.
Amazing. Joy, so obviously we're familiar with you, but Joy is like the true, the quintessential multi-hyphenate. We've seen Joy over the years that we've known Joy. We've seen her go through so many different phases of her journey. And excited to talk about where you are today. But Joy, talk us through, who you are. Like, what is it that Joy Fennell, what is Joy Fennell?
Let's see. So I guess first, I do have to say I am a multi-hyphenate, a very proud one.
Yeah.
I have, ever since I was young, I could never just make up my mind on one thing that I wanted to do. And so because of that, I was able to go through a lot of different iterations and learn a lot of different things, which I'm really happy I did, because I feel like all of that learning now informs what I do now.
Mm.
And so because of that, I'm just happy to, get to a place where I can try to impart some of my knowledge on some other people, other things, other places. And so, so I think that's who Joy Fennell is.
But you're a creator, no matter what. You are
Yeah.
a true creative. And I think throughout all of your different phases, I really want to get to understand, have you always been that way, or was it something that kind of you evolved into?
I think I evolved into it. I mean, like growing up, I was always a creative, but also smart at the same time. I was got really good grades in school and all that. But once I got to college, that's when I started really delving into my creative side, where I took off some time to become a makeup artist.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent 20 years in makeup and become in the fashion and beauty industry, really honing my craft with that. And then, as we all know, 2020 hit, and that's when a lot of different things really kind of shook up. But but that's where I would say I have always been a creative in some way.
I love that. Like so many of us multifaceted creatives, we go through so many phases of life. Before we get into those initial phases, tell the people what you do now, what your brand is now, so they can kind of understand that journey and how you've evolved.
Yeah, so now I am the founder and CEO of The Future in Black, which is an AI-powered design studio based in New York City. But of course, we have clients all over the country, all over the world. So that's where I am now. I do a lot. I focus a lot on beauty because, of course, as a makeup artist, that's what really informs a lot of my work. But also a branch of The Future in Black is an opportunity for me to use my voice to really talk to Black creatives and get them involved in this process. Once I started down this road in AI, I started seeing the opportunities that came up, and I was like, and I really want Black creatives, Black people to really see this as an opportunity for us all to get involved and for us all to start using our voice to train these models and also just get into the process of it.
This is the first time we've really heard of like AI in the beauty industry. And from being a makeup artist, it's like you've really seen the evolution, like from beginning to where we are now. So tell us about like how important it is to kind of keep up with the evolution of your industry, and kind of what kept you empowered throughout all of the changes that you saw?
So that's a really good question. I think so. When I first started in the industry, I've gone through a lot of different iterations with technology in the industry. And so I can definitely remember clearly when digital photography came into play and Photoshop came into play. And that set the industry into a tizzy as well. Like a lot of people were really nervous. A lot of photographers were really like thinking, oh, this is going to take my job and everything. And hey, I'm always about realism. I'm always about truth. In some ways it did, you know. I feel like there are different spectrums in the industry, and you have your industry elites, you know, who are always going to have a job. If they don't learn digital photography, they're always going to get booked because now their service is now premium. Right. So if they use film, they're going to get booked because they have, you know, like, hey, the heavyweights, they want that name, they want that star power. But I would say that the people who were in the middle road, who necessarily haven't made a name for themselves per se, but aren't at the beginning of their careers, they were the ones that I feel like started to get phased out because they didn't want to learn digital photography. That was not, they held on to not learning it so much that the industry went on without them.
Moved on without them.
Exactly. And so the new people that came in, they adapted very quickly to learning it. And so I feel like that's the same thing with what's going on with AI. You know, I definitely feel like, you know, we have our industry vets in the beauty industry, and not just beauty, like all around. But I feel like it is going to be a place where if you don't learn it, if you don't at least learn the language of it, there will come a time when you might get phased out.
That's a great point.
We have to be honest.
Yeah. And what I've always been impressed by you and your journey as well is your ability to embrace changes, to pivot, but also to galvanize. So, you know, we initially engaged with you in one venture, we supported you in another, and now we're here with another venture that you have. So as you're kind of starting these initiatives, starting these projects, starting these ventures, how are you able to galvanize folks to get it off the ground? But then even for a lot of folks, having an idea, but then being able to execute on it are really challenging. So for you, how have you been able to decide on a project and then also get it off the ground, taking from an idea to something that tangibly actually happens?
I think for me, it's just all about action. You know, I think like a lot of people are great at talking about things and, you know, wishing and hoping and, you know, I can't do this until this is in this place. You know, I've had the great opportunity of meeting some amazing dynamic people such as yourselves throughout my career. And once I meet people like you all, you know, I immediately, I have like a Rolodex in my head. I'm like, I immediately think to myself, okay, they would be good for this, you know, like, or the, you know, somebody would be good for that. So I immediately start to see how I can benefit you all and vice versa, you know, and making sure that I'm not just a person that just talks it, but actually walks it, and making sure like, you know, the people, you know, I really want to empower, and I really want, especially for Black folks, I want to empower Black folks and not even, I guess in a way, not even just say empower, because I feel like we have power. I want us to recognize that we have power and not to constantly wait for someone else to give it to us, you know? So, yeah.
Have you seen, because like Donnie said, and for y'all at home, Joy is actually one of our very, very first clients. So that's when Joy said that she literally has always thought of us. We're appreciative because in the early days, she took a chance on us with a previous venture that she was in. And here we are sitting on this couch today with her through another one. So the fact that you've been true to exactly what you're saying and you walk the walk. Have you always had the vision the same way that you saw Photoshop as something that was coming and you had to adapt? What is it about you that is this uncanny thing that you can see it coming and you see that shift and you're able to start putting yourself in position versus being on the back heel?
Well, I feel like when I first started my career, I don't know, for some reason, I always wanted to be at the forefront of what was next. And that's a really hard place to be sometimes
Scary.
because a lot of times you're lonely in it.
Yeah.
A lot of people will always have something to say or always, question, and but I've always wanted to know what's next, what's coming next, and always have my foot on the pulse or my hand on the pulse of what's next. And so for me, that was really important. Like I didn't want to be a follower. I wanted to see, like how can I, make some real change, real like meat and potatoes change, and I wanted to do something that wasn't not follow the path that I think everyone's on or a lot of people are on. I wanted to see how could I do something different, but also once I'm doing something different, make long lasting change.
Here you are, being a change maker.
Oh, thank you.
You are.
Thank you.
But what do you think for the future in Black? What do you think is a space that makes it unique? Because obviously, like you said, you're at the vanguard. You're doing something that is still relatively new. Believe it or not, Joy was one of the first people who talked to us about AI in the way that like we're talking about now, and it's just a common thing. Our grandmothers, our mothers know about AI.
Yep.
But Joy was one of the first people that I remember that ever was talking about this AI thing and how to be able to leverage it in your business. And AI has all these, amazing things about it. It makes you go faster. It makes you be able to, be more effective. But for your business, what is it about the space that you saw that there was a need that you wanted to create this to be able to fill?
Well, I think to answer that question, I have to take it back just a little bit.
Just take us
Once
back.
I started learning about AI, or started hearing about AI, I was terrified of it. I was like, oh, we have to shut it down. like how can we end this? And I think one of the reasons why is because listening to an old Breakfast Club video with Andrew Yang and how he was saying how AI, once it's introduced, the income for the Black community is going to go to zero.
Yeah.
And that terrified me. And I was like, oh, well, then why is it coming out?
Right.
Right. Stop it now.
Yeah. So what happened is, and I have not really ever talked about this, is that I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis a while ago. And that had a really big impact on my career, my makeup artist career. And that's part of the reason why I had to retire from being a makeup artist.
Wow.
Okay.
With that said, I then started hearing about metaverse and Bitcoin or, Web3. And I started being like, what's this? Like I started being like, let me just kind of ask about it. And so I would be on sets with photographers and other people. And I would be like, have you guys heard of Web3? And they'll be like, oh, here she goes again. But I had to, eventually I'm getting older. I'm going to age out of this industry. What's next? And so then I started, trying my hand at AI, and I'm like, well, what is this about? Why am I fearful of this? Why, instead of me not, being fearful of it and not trying it, let me see, what is this about? Once I did that, I then started seeing the opportunity, and I started being like, oh, like now I see that this is actually an opportunity for all of us to get involved and not be fearful of it. Like once we start leveraging and being involved in the process, then that's how we can start to change some things. And so for me, that was one of the main things that I wanted to see, or rather to show, is that, okay, we're hearing about this. And I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times I do feel like we're the last ones to the party.
Yeah. For sure.
And I was like, I don't want us to be the last one. This, what happens in business is that, you see all the major players start to enter the field and they lock it up. And then what happens to creatives? They're then paid for their talent to now make these brands look cool.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we're not paid what we need to be paid. You know, we don't have a say. We don't have power. We don't, you know, and when I hear people say we have power, I'm like, you know, what I was saying earlier off camera was one of the things that I find is that when it comes to power, you really just have to look at and see like, where does the power really lie? Like, are we able to really say things or go against the grain? And, you know, what contracts do we have the power to pull?
Right.
You know, that alone will tell you none. You know, lights will continue to be on.
Yeah.
And, you know, people slight our community and all they have to say is, I'm sorry.
It's easy.
What contracts do we pull from them to make sure that their livelihoods are affected? But that will definitely happen to us if we do something to someone else.
Yeah.
So that was really what I was starting to analyze, a 360, like looking at this ball and being like, how do we change this? And then I was like, okay, this is the beginning of the next tech revolution. And we need to be involved in this. And I've had people say to me, well, AI is going to erase us. Well, we don't get in the process.
And how did you get people on board? Because like you said, at the beginning, on the brink of anything, it's scary, you're alone. So how did you get people to actually pay attention to things that you were saying? Or, you know, when you were starting up these conversations and people were projecting what AI could and couldn't do, how were you combating that?
Well, I would say this, and, you know, I don't even know if I've really gotten people to really get involved yet. You know, I think I'm starting to lay the foundation of it. But, you know, I think that, you know, people, you know, just having off of an event that I had a couple weeks ago, at where I talked about AI and fashion and AR. It's not even just AI. It's like AR, augmented reality, 3D, gaming. Like look at all of these things and then see if you can somehow, you know, make a career or add this to your toolbox. You know, it's not a replacement. Add it to your toolbox and see what else your offerings can be, and how now you're able, you know, one of the ways in which to get people involved is to let them know like they're the ones that can now monetize their own gifts. And it doesn't have to be a third party involved. You know, now you get to own your own gifts and you get to lay out, you know, what's important and what your income is going to be.
Yeah. And more than anything, especially in our community, it's about seeing. You could say everything and sometimes people just want to be able to see it. And unfortunately, based off the advice that you're giving people of getting ahead of it, unfortunately, what that seeing looks like is people actually losing jobs, losing opportunities because they're unwilling to adapt. But I think for you, not only were you able to start showing proof, talk to us about what happened in 2020 where you were able to get actual brands to put up money to support you.
So in 2020, even before everything with George Floyd, I wound up, well, you know, we all know the pandemic happened in 2020. And so it was literally like probably right in there where I was able to create the All Black Everything Summit. I got a bright idea at 3 a.m. and I said,
the ideas always come in the middle of the night.
I was like,
I got it. Figured it out.
I couldn't sleep. Once I was like, because I wanted to know how Black creatives were dealing with the pandemic and how they were going to sit there and, you know, like how were we going to come out of this? Because I felt like it was a reset that was going on. How can we come out of this ahead of how we went in it? And so my thing was I wanted to get all these Black creatives together, have a 3-day summit where I was going to moderate all the panels and everything. A lot of people at the time were like, are you crazy? And I was like, yeah. And I would tell people,
I love that.
Like, I would tell people, I'm like, let me know now if you're in, because if not, this train is moving. And I don't know how I made all the graphics. I did all the, you know, I mean, like I was in it. Like, and then the whole time I was like, why did I open my mouth? like, why did I open my mouth? But I would say that was the catalyst for me to really make some changes. And the Future in Black was born out of the All Black Everything Summit. for brands, the first summit I had, I wound up having two. The first one I had a friend of mine, she's sponsored. But the second one I had, which I really appreciate, just off the bat, someone believing in you and willing to give you money for it. Oh my gosh, amazing.
This idea that you had 3 a.m.
Yeah, exactly. And so I wound up having a second one, and that got sponsored by Visa. And, you know, I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my gosh. And after that, though, and excuse me, let me also back up. The first one also was like a few weeks before the George Floyd incident. And so I was like, wow. And so after that, then that's when you started to see the explosion of other, other organizations doing things and everything. Great. I think for me, once that happened, and then once I had the second one, I wanted to take a step back because I was like, I don't want to rush this, And on top of that, I don't want to just have a yearly summit. I was like, how do I actually affect long-lasting change? I'm not a person that always wants to talk about, we've had a ton of conversations about things, not just us, but in the world in general, we have a ton of conversations. Where's the change? Where's the real long-lasting change? And so for me, I decided, instead of going forward, I decided to take a step back and really calculate and really think to myself, how do I really do something that's different, or rather do something that I feel like is actually going to change some things. And so that's when the Future in Black was born.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I love the intentionality too. So as you're building and ideating around the Future in Black, can we maybe explain a little bit about, because it sounds like it's a mixture of community upliftment for creators, but then also there's these services involved. So talk us through kind of like the change that you see the Future in Black making, and then how is it all at the same time maybe galvanizing community, but then offering services as well?
Well, I think all of that is going to go all of that goes hand in hand, because one of the things I definitely want to do is like bring on Black creatives as well to be the decision makers, to be the people that work on these projects. I mean, we work with everyone. However, I definitely want to make sure Black creatives are at the table, building their own tables, bringing their own chairs, making sure that they have a place in this. And so that is where I want to go with. I want to make sure and so it also goes in hand in hand with community, because I feel like once, a lot of times, like you said, we have to see it to believe it, which, like in some ways, that's great. But in some ways, if you don't see it, you have to create it, can't keep waiting for someone to show you that it's possible. And I think that is, some of the things that I want us to realize, it's possible because we thought about it, let's get it going, And so for me, that is where it all kind of goes hand in hand. When I first started doing AI, I never saw it, a lot of the things that are getting back didn't look like me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no.
Who is this?
Yeah. And I was like, okay, so this is a problem. This is where I see the bias. And so we have to add our voices. We have to add, when we look at, or rather hear the stories about AI, and, we think of some Wizard of Oz moment where someone's in the cloud making things, well, that's why we need to get involved, so we could pull back that curtain and, move them out of the way so that we can write our own stories and have our own voices involved in this.
Yeah. And how do y'all do that? Like, what is the product or the service that you offer to be able to assist in that? Or is it just education?
Well, it's education, but also the services that I offer are in campaigns, I want to make sure we're being represented in these campaigns, campaigns. I've also been dabbling in film, 3D as well. 3D and gaming, the gaming industry in general, when you look at, they don't hire people like us. So if they're creating characters in these games, a lot of these characters are stereotypical characters.
Yep.
And so, and then we're surprised,
Right. Which is still crazy that even in 2024.
Exactly.
Right.
That's
yeah. So we have to see these as areas of opportunity, you know?
Sure.
And the only way we're going to change it is to get involved.
That's a fact.
Yep, that's
Love
the
it.
word. That's the word, Joy. Well, you have really dropped a bunch of gems for us today. We want to wrap up with our culture questions.
Okay.
And these are a series of questions that one come from straight from us, straight from our culture, and then also give you a range. You might get anything, you might get something fun, or you might get something serious. So let's
Okay.
just see what you get.
Okay. Well, is it possible for you to pick?
Yes,
one?
I got
All
you.
right. Thank you.
She don't want to mess
It's
up her
like-
mic.
I know. I'm like, yeah.
You don't need no accent.
All right. Thank you. All right. So let's see. What's the first question? What's your boss up song?
Oh,
Ooh.
what gets you going?
So I'm a Ye fan. Y'all already know this. Y'all already know this.
Yeah.
You know, so Black Skinhead or, you know, off of Yeezus or something
Okay.
like that whole album will get me like
Them
popping.
drums.
You know, yeah, exactly. The drums and listening to the word, like really listen to the words and the lyrics, y'all. Like, don't, like, I know y'all gonna hear Black Skinhead, but listen to the lyrics.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah. So that's my boss.
What's your
song.
favorite lyric? Because I feel like you know the whole song.
I mean, of course, now I'm on the spot. I think off the top.
She about to break into song.
But also Power.
Oh yeah.
Power's a great
Mhm.
song
Power's a
too.
good one.
That was
So yeah.
And a
so-
good message with it too.
Exactly. So that too. So yeah.
Who are the people, speaking of like a Ye, obviously, you know, take it how you want with Ye.
Exactly.
But he's pushing the culture, doing a lot of things that you say in terms of being able to demonstrate. Who are some other people that in your journey, both from when you started in makeup to even now, that you feel like really pushed you to want to level yourself up?
That's a good question. Definitely have, I think off the top of my head, I can't think of names right now, but it's always someone who's going against the grain.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Always. It's always someone who's challenging the status quo, who is putting themselves out there and willing to get canceled,
Yeah.
you know? And I just have a big respect for them. I'm not saying they do everything right.
Right.
Hello. I'm not saying they do everything right, or rather what is right, you know?
Mm.
But I will say that challenging things to me is really important.
So it sounds like it's Kanye.
It is. I mean, he is
It's
definitely
Kanye.
a change maker.
Yeah.
Like, let's
Yeah.
be real. I'm not, you know, him, you know, gosh, I can't. It's like I automatically go blank when I think of things. I should have
Yeah.
written this down before.
Nah, it's all right.
You know?
But look, at the end of the day, I think it was Nipsey I heard say the highest human act is to inspire.
Mhm.
And so regardless of what someone does, you know, you may not agree with that, but the fact that they were able to inspire you to do something else great, that's them passing their power on to you. And now you're, through the Future in Black, able to pass along something else to somebody else.
I try to not necessarily talk politics, but in terms of what, you know, the challenging, that's the part that I'm like, okay, I'm feeling that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
I get
shake
that.
it up a bit. I love that.
Yeah.
Joy, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Kicking off season 2, right?
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I always love talking to each and every one of you all. I appreciate everything that you've done for me. And, you know, just it's always been a pleasure. And to see you guys grow as well, I love it. And I'm definitely always rooting for you all.
Wow, we
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome.
Thank you.
Well, Joy, any last words that you want to say to the folks at home?
I think my last words would be get involved. You know, get involved in writing these stories. You know, don't be that person that just sits at home and complains and, you know, is upset at the world. Well, the only way it's going to change is if you lend your talent to changing it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm like, you know, like, just put yourself out there.
I love that.
Love it.
I love that. If you can't take nothing from that, you need to listen to this again.
Yeah.
But thank you for watching another episode of the 1111 podcast. We got an exciting season for y'all, but this is how we want to start it off. Check y'all out next time.
Yay. Peace.